served chicken. We ate the breast and the thigh. She would be in the kitchen gnawing on the bones. And if you look at traditional herbal and medical paradigms, they believe that certain parts of foods that we eat affect certain parts of our body. So therefore, the bones and connective tissue of animals would benefit our bones and connective tissue. So balancing the muscle building proteins, the whey, the dairy, the grains, with the connective tissue proteins from broth is critical to health, and no one's talking about it. So back to your question, though, when you have an imbalance of the other proteins that are rich in methionine, what happens is you tend to burden your liver, focus on muscular health, and I believe you tend, as a result, to age more quickly because you are not bolstering the part of your body that holds you together. That would be your bones, your joints, ligaments, tendons, and your skin. This leads to injuries. We're seeing it in sports in abundance. This leads to accelerated aging, and this leads to inflexibility and joint discomfort. So therefore, Ben, when someone balances these proteins by consuming bone broth or bone broth protein, they are providing beauty building, bone building, joint building, and really importantly, gut supportive properties. Not to mention, glycine and proline also contribute to detoxification. Can you imagine consuming a protein that actually detoxifies you?
Right.
It is absolutely important.
And glycination, which is one of the ways the liver detoxes, as you mentioned, and glycine deficiencies are not uncommon, actually. So you can actually bump up your liver's ability to glycinate and detoxify and get yourself a source of glycine, which, as you mentioned, methionine, I got to thinking, there's a phenomena called methionine toxicity, and there's also methionine balancing, correct?
Correct. Absolutely, and nobody's talking about it. We now know, Ben, that fats are good, especially polyunsaturated essential fatty acids. But we believe we're getting too much omega-6, not enough omega-3, and that balance has been talked about for 15 years. Who's talking about methionine toxicity? Who's talking about methionine imbalance? A few select nutrition pioneers are, but let's get the people knowledgeable now. That's why we're dealing with all of this inflammatory response. That's why we're dealing with all of these leaky gut issues, gut hyperpermeability. It's why we're dealing with accelerated aging. And every time you turn on the TV, people are talking about skincare products, injections. They're talking about ways to tonify the connective tissue. Everyone that I work with who comes to me for health coaching, Ben, has a connective tissue imbalance. Right. Everyone 100%. Right. And we can begin to chip away at the issue with bone broth protein.
You said something super, super cool that I think we really need to dive into, and that is the distinction between methionine-containing proteins and bone protein. And we never make that distinction when we talk about eating meat, but actually meat is not the same as bone. We'll talk about that when we come back from our break. I'm Pharmacist Ben. You're listening to The Bright Side. We're talking to Jordan Rubin about bone broth protein. We'll take a quick break and be back right after this. Okay, we're back on The Bright Side. I'm Pharmacist Ben. If you're interested in taking a look at our bone broth protein in various flavors, head over to brightsidehealth.com. And everybody who orders bone broth protein today and tomorrow, and for the next few days, actually, will get a copy of Jordan's book, a link to a copy of Jordan's book, The Bone Broth Breakthrough. It's got recipes as well as all things bone broth, which is what we're talking about today with Jordan Rubin. All right, so Jordan, before we went to break, you said something really cool about meat and about methionine. And most of us, when we think about eating meat, just think about eating meat, but there's actually a very interesting distinction between the meat and the bones, correct?
Correct. Absolutely. In fact, that is really the epitome of a methionine-dominant protein versus a proline-glycine dominant, or what we're calling muscle-building versus connective tissue building. And to be clear, I'm assuming that everyone listening is either consuming animal meat, eggs, dairy, grains, seeds, legumes, or certainly grain, seeds, and legumes if you're a vegan or on a plant-based diet. As different as you would think muscle meat and seeds are, they actually are both high in methionine. However, broth from bones and connective tissue is very different. People ask me all the time, Ben, are you saying that bone broth protein is the only protein I should consume? Absolutely not. But I do believe bone broth protein is the only supplemental protein that people should consume. There's a big distinction. Here's my point. We're already eating grains, seeds, nuts, legumes, dairy, eggs, and meat. Why supplement,
Yes.
which means get something you don't have
Right.
when you already have it?
Right.
So what I'm saying is eat broth. Certainly do it. We can talk about the differences again with broth and bone broth protein. Eat it in your diet, but I doubt you can get enough to correct the imbalance. However, you certainly don't need more rice
Yes.
protein, pea protein, milk protein,
That's awesome.
or beef protein. What we need is protein sources that also contain collagen, hyaluronic acid, glucosamine, chondroitin, and many other what we would call glycosaminoglycans that are all found in bone broth protein. And bone broth protein then almost acts as an electrolyte replacement because it is rich in organically bound serum-soluble minerals such as potassium and sodium. It is absolutely amazing how well-rounded bone broth protein is. And I give a lot of seminars, as you do, and I've never had a product, by the way, I've developed hundreds. I've never had a product where every person that comes in the book signing line who asks me for advice, I say, take bone broth protein, take bone broth protein. I've found that ocular health or your eyes can be improved. You can grow your nails faster. I can't think of anything from head to toe that can't be supported by bone broth protein.
Because connective tissue is head to toe. And it's the connective, everything you're talking about is the connective tissue. And I think this distinction is just brilliant between between what you're calling muscle building protein, I would say meat, and connective tissue building protein, which is the bone. In other words, we're supposed to be eating the chicken, the leg, and the bone as well, the flesh and the bone. But we don't. We just eat the flesh. And what you're saying is this bone broth protein helps balance out the excess muscle building protein that you get when you're eating the chicken. So why have more of that? Which is what most supplements are. It's just more of that. We should be balancing it out. That is absolutely brilliant. And I predict, as you mentioned, that we'll be talking more and more about this idea of methionine toxicity and methionine balance in the coming months and coming years as well. Gosh, you said so many different things there that are fascinating to me. I've been working with glucosaminoglycans in the skin health business for many, many years. They're well known as being super important for the skin, but you can't get anywhere near the benefits of the glucosaminoglycans topically that you can as when you ingest them. Glucosaminoglycans help swell the skin, help protect against wrinkles. They stimulate the production of collagen, Jordan. They're not just collagen. They stimulate the production of collagen. And then also, I wish you would. Why don't you talk a little bit about glucosaminoglycans and the immune system and what they do for the immune system? Because you're talking here about a protein that is very powerful for the immune system as well. Correct?
Absolutely, and I think we all agree that supporting healthy inflammation response is number one when it comes to immune system, and probably number two is supporting the gut, and number three is detoxification. So if you can support detoxification through increasing glutathione, the master antioxidant, if you can support gut health with a combination of proteins, amino acids, and glycosaminoglycans, and you can support the immune system through, number one, healthy inflammation response. And then, of course, we know that chicken soup supports the immune system. University of Nebraska researchers believe that components within bone broth help stimulate neutrophil production, which can help support the immune system additionally. So there are so many ways to do it, but here's what I want you to understand. Bone broth protein doesn't just give you the equivalent of multiple cups of home-cooked bone broth. It gives you glucosamine, chondroitin, hyaluronic acid, and collagen at a full dose. You're getting more collagen from bone broth protein than the clinical research dictates. And that means you can replace your collagen. Number two, more chondroitin than the research, which is very credible for supporting healthy inflammation and joint comfort. You get more of that in one serving of bone broth protein. You get glucosamine. And Ben, when we talked about this is probably the most exciting aspect of what's hidden inside bone broth protein. 650 milligrams of serum-soluble hyaluronic acid.
That's awesome.
In solution and absorbable. That's an expensive product on its own.
That alone, Jordan, just that alone makes the bone broth protein a stupendous supplement. Just that, without anything else. That's amazing, man. How about for wound healing and post-surgery?
That's a great question. I do believe that anything that holds you up and covers you, which is your skin, bones, joints, ligaments, tendons, is made better by stimulating and supporting connective tissue. I can't think of a time of day, year, month, or a circumstance not to consume it. And I'm ready to say this. If someone's listening and says, I feel good, I would like to have maybe some more joint flexibility and comfort, but I really want to look better. Today, people are doing a lot of therapies with bioidentical hormones. They're getting a lot of treatments. They're easier to get. They're more convenient, but let's face it, they still come with risks. They still can change the way you look, and they're not natural. I believe bone broth protein is such a strong internal beauty product that I would challenge people to order the product, take a facial photograph, and 3 months later, observe it. I'm not going to tell you exactly what's going to happen, but I do believe
it'll look better.
That when you consume connective tissue, building proteins and nutrients, and electrolytes, I believe you're going to see
you can't help it.
A visible difference.
Yeah, you can't help get a visible difference. You said something just now very interesting. You know, people are on these hormone replacement therapy programs, protocols. I'd say more postmenopausal women are on it than not. Hormones are pushing synthesis. They're turning the cells on. But what the bone broth protein is providing is the raw materials, so that when you're driving, when you're upregulating protein synthesis at the cell level with the hormones, having the raw materials is probably a good idea, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely, and I'm not suggesting that this replaces hormone therapy, but if you're on an anti-aging protocol, how could you not address this powerful issue? Because otherwise, it's sort of a Band-Aid, right?
Right, and you could actually do more harm than good if you try to upregulate synthesis without having the raw materials, which the bone broth protein will provide. All right, we've got to take a break, Jordan. We'll come back and we'll talk a little bit about digestibility and bioavailability, and also a little bit about the cost of the bone broth protein when we come back from our break. I'm Pharmacist Ben. You're listening to The Bright Side. We'll be back in just a little bit. Don't go away. Okay, we're back on The Bright Side. I am Pharmacist Ben. If you're interested in taking a look or purchasing our bone broth protein, head over to brightsidehealth.com, and we will send you a link in return or with your order for a copy of the Bone Broth Breakthrough. That's Jordan Rubin's bone broth book with recipes as well as information, a lot of the information we're talking about here today. All right, Jordan, digestibility of bone broth protein, that's one of its features, no?
No. Absolutely. I mentioned the term serum soluble, and let's just think about it this way. Insoluble means it can't mix with water, so it'll be dispersed, it'll float, or it'll sink. Soluble means it mixes in water. Some people will call this isotonic, hypertonic. I think that it is very important to understand that anything we consume, because our body is a water body, must be put in solution before it's utilized. So bone broth protein and all of the constituents being in this serum soluble form require less work for the body to get it into the system. And I've said this all along. You're not what you eat, you're what you digest and assimilate. So bone broth protein, in my opinion, not only is incredibly easy to digest, I believe it supports your digestion of other foods. In fact, we talked yesterday, there is a preclinical study on the main ingredient in bone broth protein that shows that it supports beneficial bacteria and boosts your microbiome. And there's no probiotics and no prebiotics, but it helps, in my opinion, seal the gut. And that's so important to all these other areas. We know that the gut's your second brain. We know the gut houses much of your immune system. So bone broth protein is amazing for those purposes. But I want to mention one quick thing, and this is my greatest pleasure with bone broth protein. My whole family uses it. I have 6 children. I have kids that play sports. They're active and they're growing. I would love to see all children in America consume connective tissue proteins, and bone broth protein is perfect for that because as they age, they are getting injuries. My son plays tackle football. He already had a fractured radius and ulna. I wish he was on bone broth protein before and after. I wish that he would have been consuming it all this time, but guess what? He can now, and all the injuries that athletes and even weekend warriors get, there's more connective tissue issues, ligament tears. There's more tendon tears than I've ever seen in my life, more fractures. I do believe that if we build our connective tissue, we will be stronger and healthier in the future. and stop focusing so much on our muscles. And here's the other thing you asked me yesterday that really was cool. You